All right, hello. My name's Andrea, or Drea for short. Today is Saturday, November 7th, 2020, and this is episode 7 of the Drea's Hook podcast. If you're joining me live here on Instagram, welcome. If you're watching the replay on IGTV, welcome. And if you're watching this on YouTube, welcome. So as always, we have a lot to talk about, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. So before I get into some of my projects, I did wanna make a couple of announcements. I announced this last week in episode 6, but I just wanna repeat it in case anybody missed it. We are no longer going to be doing the podcast every week. We're going to do it every other week. So episode 8 of the podcast isn't gonna be next Saturday. It's going to be the following Saturday on the 21st. But next week, I do have something planned. I'm going to be doing another Make With Me episode. I did one about 3 weeks ago, I think, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm still going to go live here on Instagram on Saturday, November 14th at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I'm going to be working on one of my projects. I don't know which project I'm going to work on. It kind of just depends on where I'm at, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope to see you next Saturday for Make With Me. Another thing about Make With Me is that I might put a question box in my stories looking for suggestions on topics that we can talk about, just to make sure that there isn't a lull in the conversation. But I do want it to be very organic and talk to y'all about what you're working on and anything else that comes up. So definitely keep an eye out in my stories for the question box. And another thing about Make With Me is they're going to be on Instagram for now, but I don't necessarily think that that's the best platform to host them on. So that might be something that we are considering for 2021. So the best way to stay updated with everything that's going on is through my Instagram. If you're watching this on YouTube, my Instagram is @DREA'S Hook. That's DREAS_HOOK. So that is the best place to stay up to date with everything that's going on with the podcast and the Make With Me and any other content that I decide to put out. Second announcement I wanted to make, I mentioned that episode 8 of the podcast is going to be on the 21st. That is the Saturday before Thanksgiving here in the States. And so that podcast theme is going to be about gratitude and thankfulness, specifically as it relates to crochet and knitting. So the things that I am grateful for that crochet and knitting has brought to my life. So I'm really excited to share that, and I hope you will stay tuned and be thinking about things that you are grateful for as it relates to the fiber arts. Alrighty, so now we can get into the good stuff, the projects. The first project that I want to talk about is my Selene Cardigan by Leroo Crochet. It's a pattern test that I've been working on and off. So I'm using We Crochet or Knit Picks Swish DK. It's a DK weight yarn, obviously, and 100% superwash merino. And I'm doing a 3-color fade. So the lightest color is called Dove Heather, and then the medium color is Marble Heather, and our darkest color is called Cobblestone Heather. So let me just hold all 3 of these up together so you can see. So it's going to be fading from light to dark, and I'm really excited about it. So as far as the actual cardigan goes, I forgot to put in a progress keeper, so it's going to be hard to tell where I left off the last time I showed this to y'all, so I apologize for that. But this is how far we've gotten into the cardigan so far. So it's worked bottom up. So that's why I've started with the Cobblestone Heather, because like I said, I want it to fade from light to dark, top to bottom. So since it's bottom up, I'm starting with the darkest color. And we're actually at the point where I have introduced the Marble Heather. It's very subtle. It's very hard to tell the difference, but the Marble Heather is here and here. So we're starting to get into the fade, and I'm really excited to see how it's going to turn out. So it's probably going to be a couple of weeks before I'm able to make some more progress on it, but it seems like it works up pretty quickly. And it seems like it's going to be really cozy. As you can see, it has quite a bit of drape. And yeah, I am really excited to finish this cardigan. All right, so the next project I've been working on forever, it seems like, is the Holiday Tunisian Crochet Along, or TCAL, by TL Yarn Crafts. Happy No More Trump Day. Yes, absolutely. I am not going to offer too many thoughts on that. I said I was going to keep the podcast nice and light, but I am definitely happy with how the election has turned out. Like, I'm so happy. It's really kind of like energized me for the podcast. What was I saying? So yeah, the Holiday Tunisian Crochet Along by TL Yarn Crafts. It's a stitch sampler blanket with 20 different blanket squares. We are currently on week 5, I believe. So next week is the last week. And I am still working on squares from week 4. So I have fallen a little behind, and I had a busy week at work this week, in addition to everything else that's been going on this week. So I haven't really had that much time or motivation to work on it and try to catch up. So, it'll get done eventually. I'm determined to finish it, but I am running a little behind. So let me go ahead and refresh y'all's memory on the colors and the yarn that I'm using. I'm using We Crochet /Knit Picks Brava worsted yarn. It's a size 4 yarn, 100% acrylic, and the blanket uses 4 different colors. So my color A is Mulberry, color B is Caution, color C is Cream, and color D is Silver. So let me hold all of these up together so you can get the full effect. This is our color palette. I love it so much. So the main colors of the blanket are actually the cream and the silver, while the mulberry and the caution are acting more as accent colors. So anyway, since the last time we talked about the blanket, I have only actually completed 1 square. So that's a little sad. I'm pretty far into the second one, but I've only actually completed 1 square. So the square that I have completed is called the Bauble Square. So the original square had the bauble. There were many more baubles. They were kind of like in a snowflake pattern. But I mentioned last week that I had a little bit of difficulty reading the chart. I don't know why. I think it was just kind of like mental fatigue, or something like that. But like, I could not for the life of me get that chart to work out. So I decided to just do my own design. And to keep things simple and to where I wouldn't have to do as much counting, I decided to just have a line of baubles going down the center of the square. Because it seems like that's like pretty trendy right now, to have like a pretty simple, not very textured stitch, and then have like some sort of accent stitch going down the middle. I've seen that on a couple of garment designs, and so that's kind of what I had in mind when I was doing the baubles like this. So there is a bauble every other row, and I'm realizing now that maybe I should have spaced the baubles out a little bit more, because I don't think that there's enough room for all the baubles to like kind of, I guess, protrude at the same time. Like, as you can see, I'm having to like deliberately push the baubles back out. So that is interesting. I'm not too happy with that, but I really don't care enough to go back and fix it, because the square was giving me a lot of trouble at the beginning, and I'm kind of just ready to move on. I'm already behind. We just got to keep it moving, and it's only 1 square out of 20, so in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter that much. So yeah, this is the Bauble Square. And then the next square that I've started, and I really am close to being done with it. I really just need to add the border, because each square has like just a basic single crochet border going around it so that they're easier to seam together. So that's the only part that I still need to do on this square. But this is, oh gosh, the yarn. Okay, this is the full stitch square. So as you can see, it's using our purple and our gray and our cream, and I really like the way that these colors look together, and I really like the way that the stitch looks. This is definitely one of my favorite squares. So yeah, you change colors every row and you carry the yarn up the side. So you can kind of see where I've carried each color up at the beginning of the row. So yeah, this one is very simple. Tunisian full stitch is you're basically working into the space in between the stitches instead of the vertical bars. So that's kind of why you get this effect where it looks like the stitches are kind of like stacked on top of each other. There were a couple of spots. Let me see if I can find them. Yeah. So there were, I don't know if y'all are going to be able to tell on camera. And there goes the lighting. Okay, I think I see it. So there were a couple spots here and here where the stitches look a little different because I accidentally did Tunisian knit stitch instead of Tunisian full stitch. So like I said, Tunisian full stitch, you're going in between the stitches, whereas Tunisian knit stitch, you're going, I guess, in between the bars of the stitch. So each stitch in Tunisian crochet has a front bar and a back bar. And so for Tunisian knit stitch, you're inserting your hook in between those bars, whereas Tunisian full stitch, you are inserting your hook in between the stitches. It's kind of hard to explain without having a visual, but when you're kind of like on autopilot and not really paying attention to what you're doing, at least for me, it seems like it's pretty easy to accidentally do Tunisian knit stitch when you meant to do full stitch or vice versa. So that's what's happened there. I didn't realize it until a few rows later, and I didn't feel like going back and fixing it. I don't think it's significant enough to fix. Like, I had a hard time just now trying to find it on camera, so I don't really think that it's a major error. So we're just gonna leave it alone. You know, sometimes you have to pick your battles. And it wasn't really worth it to me to frog it, especially with 3 different colors going on. So yeah, like I said, I am almost done with this square. I just need to add the border, which I'm planning on doing today, and then we can move on. So there was a square that I attempted to do this week that didn't really go to plan, and that is the meandering cable square. So it is possible to do cables in Tunisian crochet. And I have never done cables in regular crochet or knitting. So this was literally my first experience ever with doing cables in any craft. So I had some issues with it. I got a few rows in. What I was really struggling with was the return pass. It was like really hard to see my stitches, and like I wasn't really confident that I was doing it correctly. And this is the first square in this entire T-Cal where like I've really like had to watch the video tutorial multiple times and like rewind it and stuff. I was really struggling. So the first time that I attempted the meandering cable square was Monday night, and then that didn't work. So the second time I attempted it was Tuesday morning, because I have been trying to get into the habit of crocheting a little bit in the morning before I start working, so that way I'm not just like going straight from bed to work, because I'm still working from home. Anyway, so like I try to crochet a little bit in the morning, and so I was trying to work on that square then, because my thought was, you know, maybe I was just tired Monday night. And so like I am definitely like more of a morning person. I'm a little fresher in the morning. I do my best work in the morning. I'm more productive in the morning, all of that. So I thought if I tried the square again Tuesday morning, I would have an easier time with it. No luck. And because I didn't want to start my day on a bad note, that's when I started the full stitch square that I just showed you, because I knew it would be a lot easier. So I've decided that I'm going to leave the meandering cable square all the way into the end. So it's literally going to be the last square that I do in this T-Cal. And if it doesn't work, then I am just going to replace it with one of the other squares. I kind of have, when it comes to like crochet and knitting and like learning new skills, I kind of have a personal rule for myself that I don't always stick to, but it's essentially a 3 strikes you're out. So if I attempt something 3 times and it's just not working, I just put it to the side and move on with my life. Because my thing is, I want to give things like a fighting chance. You know, not everything is going to click on the first try or the second time, and that's totally okay. But I figure by 3 times I have, you know, put in a good effort, I've tried my best, and I have, you know, like not just given up immediately. So the next time that I try to make the meandering cable square will be the 3rd time. So if it doesn't work, I am just going to replace it with another square, because I'm wanting to get this blanket done, and I really don't want to be hung up on one square. So, and I don't anticipate having issues with any of the other squares that are coming up. So I'm not going to, like, I need to finish this blanket, y'all. Like, I need to finish it. So we're just gonna do what we can. Let's see. I love how chill you are about that little mistake. Thank you. Yeah, you know, it's something that I have to work on. You know, I am not somebody who likes making mistakes. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and so I actively have to, you know, tell myself that, you know, sometimes it's okay to make mistakes. And like I said, this mistake isn't very visible in the grand scheme of things, and it wasn't affecting the stitch count or anything like that. So when I do make mistakes, if it affects the stitch count or like the general shape or functionality of whatever I'm making, I will go ahead and go back and fix it, but that was not the case here. So we're just gonna keep it moving. So yeah, we will try the cable square again, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and I'm okay with that. You know, I will learn Tunisian crochet cables eventually, but maybe this just isn't the time. You know, there have been a number of skills where like I just struggled with it and I couldn't get it, and then I tried again several months later, and all of a sudden it just clicks. So maybe that will happen with this, but I'm not going to wait several months to finish this blanket. So that's that. So once I finish the full stitch square, and then the cable square or whatever I'm going to replace it with, those are all the squares for week 4. And then week 5 is the last week that actually has squares associated with it. So the squares that are left for week 5 are the circle in square, the 2-tone Tunisian simple stitch square, the honeycomb square, and the tree square. So those seem like those will be really fun. I know the tree square in particular involves cross stitching, and that's something that I've been wanting to get into for a while. So I'm really excited for that one. And I'm not anticipating having a ton of issues with those. I know the circle in square has short rows in it, but I'm not really expecting that to be too bad. So once we finish those, we will be done with all the squares that we need for the blanket. There are 20 total, and so after that it will be weaving in ends and blocking and seaming them together and adding the border. So yeah, still quite a bit of work ahead, but we're getting close. I can see the light ahead at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, the tea cowl is supposed to end on November 15th. Today is November 7th. So I don't think I'm gonna be done by the 15th, and that's okay. But I would still like to finish within the month of November, wrap this up, and I'm really excited to actually be able to use it as a blanket, because it's gonna be a pretty decently sized blanket. I don't remember the dimensions off the top of my head, but I know it's like throw size, so I'm excited to have it around. So that is the holiday tea cowl. Let me see, let me get some water. All right, so the next project I wanted to talk about, I haven't talked about this one in a while because I've been focused on the cardigan and the blanket. This is another blanket that I'm working on. It's the Traveling Knit Afghan. So if you're not aware, Lion Brand Yarn and Two of Wands are hosting this year-long make-along. There's a crochet version and knit version, And there are all these designers involved, so they'll each design a square, attach it to the blanket, send it to the next designer, and it goes on and on like that until at the end of 2020 you have a completed blanket with 24 squares. So I'm doing the knit version. This is my very first knit project. I'm a very novice knitter. So it's something I've been working on. I don't remember off the top of my head how many squares I have completed. I think 7 or 8 squares, and I've been working on them out of order because some of the squares have very difficult skills that I'm not comfortable with yet, so I'm saving those for the end. So the square that I'm currently working on is square number 3, which is designed by the Queen Stitch. And essentially it's supposed to be a crown. So, I don't remember which side is the right side. It's been a while since I've looked at this. Okay, I think this is the right side. So you can kind of see how this is the beginning of the crown. So most of the square is in stockinette stitch, and then the part that's the crown is supposed to be in reverse stockinette. But I did run into a bit of an issue. You know, since I work on so many different projects, which definitely learning some lessons about that, sometimes it can be several days or even weeks before I start working on a different project again, and I'm not the best note taker or anything like that, and so it can be hard to remember where you left off, what row you left off, especially in knitting, because since I'm not as experienced with knitting, I have a hard time counting my rows. So when I was working on this a few weeks ago, I realized that maybe I was on the wrong row just based on how things were lining up, and so I decided that I was going to try to frog back a couple of rows. So I tried to insert a lifeline. You can see it, it's this blue thread that I have in here. I decided to try to insert a lifeline, and it didn't really end well. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but you can kind of see how we have, when I actually tried to, words are hard, when I actually took the needles out and tried to frog, we ended up with this weird loop here. It looks like what happened is, this is really bad acrylic yarn. I don't say that lightly. I'm not sure if it's gonna show up on the camera, but you can literally see plastic in it, because acrylic is basically plastic. And with this one, you can definitely tell. It is a very inexpensive yarn. I have no idea what brand it is. No idea. A friend gifted it to me. She had once been trying to learn how to crochet and knit and decided that she didn't want to pursue that anymore. So she gifted me her yarn, and this was some of it. And it's, yeah, I don't know what brand it is, but I wouldn't recommend it. So I'm thinking what happened is when I inserted the lifeline, somehow the yarn got split and caught on it, and that's why we have this situation going on. So I'm not sure what to do about it. I've been debating, should I just start over on this square? It's not like I'm that far into it, maybe about 12 rows. Or should I try to put in another lifeline below that? I have no idea what to do. It's gonna be a while before I'm able to work on this again anyway. But I realized that I hadn't shared what happened with this one. So yeah, it's definitely still a lot to learn with knitting for sure. So maybe in the future I'll use one of those apps to where you can keep track of what row you're on. So that way we can minimize frogging in situations like this a little bit. So that is where I'm at on the Traveling Knit Afghan. Like I said, this is square number 3. The next one that I'm going to try to make is square number 4 by Knit Brooks. It doesn't look hard, but I didn't think this one looked hard either. So we'll see how that goes. A little bit more water. All right. And then the next project that I wanted to talk about that I also haven't talked about in a while and also haven't worked on in a while is the lattice lace dress designed by Stephanie Aaron, and the yarn I'm using is Lion Brand Kobu in silver. So I do have a little progress keeper in this one. It's been several weeks since I've talked about this, over a month I would say. So this is the progress keeper. And so you can see I've literally only done like, okay, I'm not good at holding things up apparently. So you can see I've literally only done like one round since I guess the last time I talked about the podcast. So very little progress on this one, but you can see I've split for the sleeves and I've done, and that looks like about an inch on the body. So I think I need to do about 2 1/4 inches on the body before I do some decreases for the waist shaping, and then work that for a few inches and do increases for the actual peplum. So this is a dress pattern, but I've decided that I'm going to modify it, cut the skirt off early, and have a peplum. So that is what the goal is here. But yeah, I haven't had any major problems with this project on the one round that I worked. You can see that I'm using 2 different dye lots, which I have mixed feelings about. And then I did have an incident with my row gauge, so I had to go back and frog a couple of rounds on the yoke to get it to fit properly. So other than that, this has been a pretty uneventful project, and I'm grateful for that. Alrighty, so those are all the projects that I had to talk about this week. Like I said, I haven't been crocheting as much as I usually do just because of everything that's going on. So not too many projects to talk about, but I started a question and answer Q&A thing last podcast. I got so many questions that I didn't get a chance to finish them. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to finish them today. So if you have any other questions you'd like to ask me, feel free to put them in the chat if you're watching live, or if you're watching this on IGTV or YouTube, definitely feel free to comment with any additional questions that you have. I am particularly thirsty today. I usually don't drink quite this much during the podcast, so maybe I didn't hydrate adequately before I got on here. Alrighty. So the first question, I actually had like 3 different people ask me this question. It is, what is my favorite hook or needle size to work with? I think somebody in particular phrased it as, like, if you were like stranded on an island and you could only have one crochet hook, what would it be? So my favorite hook size is a 4mm hook. I am not sure what letter size that correlates to. I'm trying to think. So I know that an H is a 5mm, so a G would be a 4.5. So would a 4mm be an F? I don't know. But anyways, it's a 4mm hook. And the reason why is because I think that it is probably the most versatile hook size that you can use for a broad range of yarns. So a 4mm hook is perfect for working with like a size 3 or a DK weight yarn. You can also use it for a size 4 yarn if you're going for something that's a little bit tighter or sturdier. My crochet style tends to be fabrics that are a little bit more solid. I don't really like a lot of like lace type stuff or really kind of like gappy things, so I tend to go for things that have a tighter gauge. And if you use a 4mm hook with a worsted weight yarn, I think that you can achieve that. But if you are someone who kind of likes things that are a little lighter and airier, a 4mm hook actually works really well with the fingering weight yarn. So I brought out one of my projects to demonstrate. I talked about this on the podcast in episodes 1 and 2. I finished it up in September, I think it is. But this is the Dancing in the Sun wrap by Knits and Knots Winnipeg. It's actually a Christmas gift for my mom, so I need to hurry up and get some finished object pictures of it before I have to give it to her. But the yarn that I used is Knit Picks or We Crochet Lindy Chain, which is a fingering weight yarn. It is 70% linen, 30% cotton. I think that's right. I think it's more linen than cotton. Like, I know it's 70-30, but I'm not sure which order the fibers are in. So yeah, fingering weight yarn. And the pattern, I believe, calls for a 5mm hook, but I had to go down to a 4mm hook to meet gauge. And I am just in love with how light this is. Like, I don't like light and airy unless it's fingering weight yarn. If I'm using fingering weight yarn, I want the drape. You know, I don't want something that's stiff as cardboard if I'm using a fingering weight yarn. And so a 4mm hook with fingering weight yarn will give you this. So that is why a 4mm hook is my favorite. You can use it with almost any yarn. I will say that I don't have too much experience working with anything that's like a size 5 or above that. I gravitate more towards DK and below, or worsted and below. So I don't think that a 4mm hook would work really well with like a bulky yarn. I've never tried it. I don't know if anybody's tried it, let me know. But I can imagine you'd start to run into like some curling and like some yarn splitting if you're using a hook that small with the yarn that heavy. But since I personally don't use yarns like that often, that's not really an issue for me. Let's see. I have some fingering weight yarn, but haven't used it yet. Oh my gosh, I love fingering weight yarn. I think fingering weight is probably my favorite weight of yarn. Like, it's just so light and airy. I know a lot of people are like don't really like it that much, or like if they've never used it, they're a little intimidated by it just because it is like so small and it takes a little while to work up. But I love fingering weight yarn, and I hope that you find a good project for it soon. Let's see, depending on how much yarn you have, I might have a couple of pattern recommendations. So if you want to talk about that, definitely let me know. So someone else asked specifically my favorite needle size, since I'm a knitter. I say that very lightly. I'm not even done with my first project yet, but I do know how to physically knit. And, you know, since I don't have as much experience knitting, I don't have a favorite needle size yet. I think the Traveling Knit Afghan is using a 5mm needle. So I guess that's my favorite by default, but ask me again in about a year or so after I have a few more knitting projects under my belt. I have so much fingering weight yarn to make socks, but socks are so intimidating. Yeah, socks are on my list of things to attempt. I've actually watched a tutorial on how to make socks, and I am also very intimidated, but it's something that I'm gonna try to tackle in 2021. It is a goal of mine, and we're just gonna have to see how it goes, but I definitely feel you on the intimidation factor. Let's see. Yes, share them with me. Okay. So remind me to send you a DM, or you can DM me because I'm probably going to forget after I get off of this. But yeah, I do have a couple of good pattern recommendations for fingering weight yarn. Let's see. Embrace the knitter life. I'm trying to. I'm having a hard time classifying myself as a knitter just because I literally don't know how to do anything. So I'm trying to embrace it a little bit, but I'm not quite comfortable calling myself a knitter yet. Are you planning on knitting or crocheting socks? I'm gonna try to knit them. I know crochet socks are a thing, but my understanding is that since crocheting produces like a thicker fabric and it doesn't really function the same way that a knitting fabric does, that they're not quite as functional as a knit sock. So I do plan on knitting them. And we're just gonna have to see how it goes. I do have a pattern that I've been looking at that was recommended to me that's good for beginner knitters. So we'll have to see how that goes. Alrighty, so the next question that I got, a couple of people asked this one as well, and it's something to the effect of, am I planning on incorporating crochet into my wedding at all? So if you're not aware, I got engaged back in February, about 6 weeks before the world fell apart. So I need to vent or rant for a little bit, just kind of give a little bit of context as to why I don't really know the answer to that question at the moment. So when we got engaged, we immediately started planning for a fall wedding. We were hoping to get married in fall of next year, 2021. And I mean, that could still happen, but unfortunately, my fiance was one of the millions, literally millions, of people who were laid off as a result of the pandemic. So the wedding planning came to a screeching halt after that happened. And, you know, there's a lot of other factors at play. And because of that, we are not sure when we are going to get married and what that's going to look like. So our wedding plans are delayed, and it's not just the matter of like, you know, maybe it's not safe to have a wedding right now. It's also trying to figure out how it's going to work financially and all of those different things and how it's going to look. So the reason I bring that up is because since we were planning for a fall wedding, we were really going to lean into the fall thing really hard in terms of the like decor and everything. And so, you know, as a crocheter or a knitter, it is very easy to, you know, make decor for fall. We were talking about like, you know, maybe having little crochet pumpkins as wedding favors and things like that. But since we no longer know when the wedding is going to happen and what it's going to look like, it's a little bit more difficult to plan ahead for that kind of thing. So I've considered all sorts of things. I've considered crocheting a wedding shawl. I've considered crocheting a wedding dress, but it's just really difficult to, you know, make those kind of plans rather, without not even knowing what we're working towards. Because one thing that's important to me, I definitely want to allow myself enough time to do whatever it is that I'm going to do. I don't want to be stressed. I'm sure if we end up going the route of having like a traditional large wedding with the reception, that there's already going to be a lot of stress associated with that. And so I never want my crafting, my crocheting, and my knitting to become stressful for me. So I'm not going to do anything that I don't have enough time to do. So the answer to that question is, I don't know. You know, it just depends on when things happen and what they're going to look like. So I don't know. We've been in limbo for the past, 8 months? I don't even know. So it just is what it is. Oh, don't be sad. Don't be sad. It's okay. You know, we have, you know, talked about it and accepted it, and it's hard. But the important thing is that one day we are going to get married. And so from that regard, it doesn't matter what it's going to look like, right? But, you know, we had plans, and, you know, it can be upsetting when the plans don't pan out. But, you know, there are a lot of people that are in our situation and worse situations. I am grateful that I didn't have to like scramble to reschedule anything. So, you know, it could be worse, I guess, but it still really sucks. So, but I do plan on having some sort of crochet aspect to the wedding. I just don't know what it is. Alrighty, more water. All right, next question. How do you come up with patterns / what's your inspiration when making them? So that's a pretty good question. I would say the two things that I think about when I'm designing patterns is I kind of draw inspiration from things that are around me. So I have patterns called, it's like a brick house series. So I should have taken them out, but I have a brick house blanket and a brick house pillow, and those are filet crochet patterns that kind of have like a brick motif. And so I was kind of inspired by that because the apartment complex that I live in, all the buildings are bricks. So I see them all the time, and it's kind of an image that has just like burned itself into my head. The second thing that I think about when designing patterns is the functionality. So a good example of that is my DREA'S drawstring bag. which is really good for holding like different notions like stitch markers and things like that, because I didn't have something that was able to do that. So that's kind of the inspiration behind that pattern. So those are my main two things that I think about when I'm designing patterns. You know, things like inspiration from things that are around me, and functionality. Like, what is this pattern going to do? Like, I guess the project, like, what purpose does it serve? Whatever you make for your wedding, it'll be beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. We'll figure it out. Definitely stay tuned for what's to come from that. Alrighty, next question. What is something not too many people know about you? So this is a pretty good question. The thing that I can think of is let me see if I can show y'all. I'm not sure if they're gonna show on camera, but I have these holes in my ears. They're not piercings. I was born with them. And I have them on both sides. And they're called, I wrote it down, preauricular pits. They're technically like abnormality, or like a, I guess, birth defect. And I guess basically when I was in utero, my ear tissues didn't close properly, so I was left with these pits. They're like rare-ish. I think I saw that every 5 to 10 babies out of 1,000 have them. And they're not like harmful or anything. I know that there's like a small chance of them getting infected, but I've never had issues with them over my entire life. And yeah, it's just kind of like a weird thing that I have. I can't like stick an earring in there. I've tried before. So they're kind of like a shallow hole, whereas a piercing goes from one side to the other. And I guess another thing that makes them more rare is that most people who have them usually only have them on one ear, but I have them on both. So yeah, that's just kind of like something I don't think I've talked about on here, just because like since I'm so far back, you can't really see them unless you get really close. So that is my weird fact that not that many people know about me. And then the last question that we have here is, what is the thing that you were most proud of that you have made? So I think the thing that I'm most proud of that I've made is my armored tee. So this is a pattern test that I did earlier this year by Leroo Crochet, and this yarn is Leroo Cotton in what's this colorway called? Sprig of Lavender, and it's fingering weight yarn. So the reasons why I'm proud of this pattern, or I guess project, several reasons. So I was working on this in March and April. Y'all know what was going on in the world, and it's still going on since March and April. So this was basically my lockdown / quarantine project. That's just the way that the timing fell out. It was my first time using fingering weight yarn. So we just talked about, possible intimidation that comes with using fingering weight yarn. So this was my first fingering weight project. This was the first project that I made using hand-dyed yarn. So lots of firsts associated with it. And, this is a project where once it was done and I put it on, I was like, I can't believe that I made this with my own two hands. Like, I just couldn't stop looking at it. So I am definitely proud of this one. And I haven't quite had that feeling since I completed this project. So it still remains. I've made several other things, other garments even, since I completed this project. But this is still the one that I'm proudest of making for all the reasons that I just listed. And so Allie, this is a recommendation for a fingering weight project if you have enough yarn to make this. So for my size, this is a medium, and I think I used about 3 skeins of fingering weight yarn. So like depending on your size and how much yarn you have, this might be a good one to make. What type of stitching is it using? This is a special stitch. I'm trying to remember. I think it's a combination of single crochet and double crochet and chains. I don't remember the exact like combination and order of that, but it is a very simple repeat. Once you get going, you can just watch your Netflix or whatever you like to do while you're crocheting and just go. And it's worked to measurements. So, okay, the construction of this is like pretty interesting. So this is actually like a very long rectangle with a hole in the middle for the neck hole. So once you get it to the appropriate width, you fold the rectangle in half and then seam it up the sides. And then from there you can add your ribbing and like your sleeves and things like that. So it is a very simple and interesting construction. And you can kind of just zone out while you're working on it. Awesome. I think I only have one skein of fingering weight right now. Let's see. Do I know of any patterns? Ooh, I know a good one. A good one skein fingering weight pattern. So I don't have it over here with me right now. It is Tunisian crochet. So I don't know if you like know how to do Tunisian crochet or you'd be comfortable learning, but a good one skein fingering weight project is a shawl designed by TL Yarn Crafts. It's called the Party Punch Shawl. It was designed to be used with one skein of fingering weight yarn. And it's kind of like you just work until you run out of yarn. So that is a really good project for one skein of fingering weight yarn, but it is Tunisian crochet, so definitely worth mentioning. The stitches are beautiful. It looked like Tunisian crochet some, nice and textured. Yeah, it has a very nice texture, but still like subtle enough to where whatever yarn you're using has a chance to shine. I really love this yarn. And honestly, I can't say enough good things about Leroo Cotton. She has so many good colorways, and this was the first one that I got to try from her, and that was like when I just got hooked. I use her yarn quite a bit, so definitely check out Leroo Cotton. And see, I have Tunisian crochet tools, but I need a lot of practice. LOL. Yeah, you know, you kind of just have to jump into it. Like if you know how to crochet, Tunisian crochet isn't really too much different. I don't know if you were here when I was talking about the holiday tea cow blanket, but that's a really good project to get your feet wet with Tunisian crochet. The Party Punch shawl that I just mentioned is another good one. Honestly, just like go to TL Yarn Crafts page. She has a lot of good like video tutorials and resources and patterns on Tunisian crochet. And I am honestly just hooked on Tunisian crochet. I love it. So yeah, love Tunisian crochet. So yeah, I think that is all that I had to talk about today. Seems like we're finishing at a pretty good time. It's 1:48. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start wrapping up here. TL Yarn Crafts is the queen of Tunisian crochet. She really is. You know, I really admire how she's kind of like managed to become the authority on Tunisian crochet. Like I had never heard of Tunisian crochet until I think I like randomly saw a video of hers that she did on YouTube a couple years ago. Never heard of Tunisian crochet. So she is really like an authority on Tunisian crochet for sure. Definitely a good resource for anybody who would like to learn Tunisian crochet. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start wrapping up here. Thank you so much for watching. If you were able to hang out with me live today, I'm so glad you were able to make it, and thank you. And I had so much fun as always. That's how I found out about her too, LOL. Yeah, she's really kind of just inserted herself there. So, I said it at the beginning, but I'm going to go ahead and say it again. We are not going to have a podcast next week. Our next podcast is going to be the week after next week on Saturday, November 21st, same time, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. But next week on November 14th, we are going to have a Make With Me. It's going to be live here on Instagram again, same time, same place, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we're just going to hang out while I work on one of my projects, yet to be determined. So definitely, like, you know, you can work along with me, grab your tea or water or your beverage of choice, and we're just gonna hang out for an hour, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. So this video and all of my other podcasts are going to be on IGTV and YouTube by Sunday. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. If you're watching this on IGTV, I'd really appreciate it if you like the video, share the video to your stories, and comment on the video. Really helps with that engagement, especially since, you know, hashtags and things like that are being heavily suppressed, for lack of a better word. And if you're watching this on YouTube, liking the video, commenting on the video, and especially subscribing are very helpful. So I believe I'm at 43 subscribers right now, so we're getting really close to 50, and I would love to get to 50 subscribers within this week. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it would be a really huge deal to me. So let's try to get to 50 subscribers. So yeah, that is all that I had to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I hope that you have a good rest of your day and a good rest of your week. And I will talk to y'all next week for Crochet With Me. Bye.